The whip cracks, a sound that slices through silence. Then nothing, just a faint heartbeat, pulsing, louder and louder, as though echoing from beneath the soil itself. History books told us slavery was about chains and fields, about cotton and sugar, about labor and economics. But those books buried the nastiest truths. They locked away the filthy lies, the unspeakable acts, the heartbreaking realities endured by black men and women under white masters. They said it was about work, but the real story was about power, a dirty, disturbing obsession with domination that invaded every corner of enslaved life. Behind plantation doors, in the quiet rooms where no record was kept, cruelty metastasized into something darker than history dared to admit. What if the darkest parts of slavery weren't in the fields at all, but in the private chambers, the hidden punishments, the muffled screams? What if the heart of this system was not just labor stolen, but dignity crushed? Tonight we uncover the stories white masters never wanted the world to know. Step back into the 17th through 19th centuries. Vast plantations stretching across the American South, the Caribbean, and colonial lands. From a distance, the mansions glisten, white columns, manicured lawns, wide verandas designed to project refinement and civilization. They were marketed to the world as proof of culture and progress, the crowning jewel of a society that called itself superior. But behind the columns lay cages, whips, shackles. Behind the laughter of dinner parties were screams no guest was ever meant to hear. The plantation house was not just a home, it was a theater, a stage where civility was performed upstairs, while cruelty played out in hidden rooms below. The myth of benevolence was one of slavery's filthiest lies. Masters painted themselves as protectors, caretakers, patriarchs guiding their so-called dependents. They wrapped themselves in religion, in morality, in carefully written justifications. Yet their sermons dripped with hypocrisy, because in the shadows they inflicted unspeakable punishments, obsessed over control, and carried out acts too disturbing to speak of aloud. Imagine walking barefoot through this house of contradictions, the polished floors gleaming like mirrors, but every reflection hiding something foul. Behind one door, a child being torn from her mother. Behind another, a young man kneeling under threat of the whip. Every corridor, a place where silence was survival. Every shadow, a place where unspeakable truths festered. This wasn't just about work in the fields. It was about total domination. Black men and women reduced to property, cataloged alongside livestock, listed in account books with the same detachment as a barrel of molasses. Enslaved lives were measured in profit margins, their suffering hidden behind clean ledgers and polite smiles. But the cruelty was not only physical, it was psychological. Warfare and everyday erosion of humanity. The rules were designed not just to punish but to humiliate. An enslaved person could be whipped for walking too slowly, beaten for looking too long, tortured for speaking out. Their silence was demanded, their obedience, their survival. And still, the torment was deeper. Families ripped apart at auction blocks, children sold without warning, names erased and replaced by those of their owners. African languages, songs, and cultural memory deliberately stripped away, leaving only fragments. Every attempt at identity became another battlefield of control. Masters wielded division as a weapon, men assigned to backbreaking field labor, women confined to the home as cooks, wet nurses, seamstresses. Each role enforced constant dependence, constant vulnerability. Black men used as stable hands or personal attendants, forced into proximity where their every move was monitored. Black women pulled into domestic servitude, their bodies at the mercy of their so-called protectors. This system was a machine of domination, every cog designed to break spirit and body. Every dawn a reminder that survival meant submission, and every night a reminder that behind the walls, nasty truths were waiting. Because what was written in law was only half the story. The other half was hidden in whispers, in locked rooms, in the silences that stretch across history. But behind this cruel system were even nastier secrets hidden in plain sight. Inside the quiet corridors, behind doors bolted against curious eyes, the filth of human obsession thrived. Masters were not alone in cruelty. Mistresses, cloaked in lace and social approval, wielded their own hidden authority. These women, painted as delicate and fragile by polite society, carried dirty rings of power that turned enslaved men and women into instruments of fear and shame. Their dominion was subtle yet total, a psychological tyranny that pierced every corner of daily life. The plantation house, outwardly serene, concealed a theater of nightmares where obedience was demanded and humanity was stripped away. Secret punishments became ritualized. Women forced black female slaves into humiliating tasks, washing, scrubbing, kneeling for hours in icy rooms, adorned in tattered garments meant to mark their lowliness. Public smiles were false. Inwardly, fear coursed through their veins. Humiliation was entertainment. Obedience was enforced not just with labor, but with degradation. A glance too long, a whisper too loud, and a mistress's wrath would descend, leaving bruises visible and invisible. The mind became a battlefield, every word measured, every movement calculated to avoid invisible traps of punishment. Some white women went further. Forbidden desire twisted into dangerous obsession. Black male slaves assigned as attendants, stable hands, or personal servants became the focus of hidden lusts. Enslaved men were coerced into submission, threatened with punishment, shamed into compliance, and trapped in a web they could never escape. Secret chambers, attics, side rooms behind locked doors became stages for unspeakable acts that history barely dares to recount. Candlelight flickered over polished floors, casting long, mocking shadows. Each room seemed alive with the silent screams of those trapped within. Masters believed privacy would hide their crimes, but walls remember. Every whispered command, every lash of cruelty, every forced act was imprinted in the memory of the enslaved, an indelible record of suffering. Jealousy and revenge fueled further violence. Black women, often victims of masters' own infidelities, became scapegoats for the mistress's rage. Punishments were brutal, designed not merely to correct, but to terrorize, to send the message that even imagined transgressions could bring devastation. Every act of cruelty was deliberate, every humiliation carefully orchestrated, and every secret tightly guarded. The public saw purity. The private rooms whispered of obsession, fear, and filth. Some mistresses became almost ritualistic in their cruelty, measuring obedience not by law but by the twisted arithmetic of control and desire. Whispers spoke of hidden codes, secret torments, rooms where slaves were forced to perform, punished or humiliated, to satisfy fantasies cloaked in secrecy and shame. The impact on the victims was relentless. Black women endured labor in kitchens and fields, while their bodies and dignity were attacked behind closed doors. Black men faced emasculation, humiliation, and the constant threat of physical punishment for the slightest perceived insolence. Silence became a survival mechanism, a mask worn to preserve life while identity, self-worth, and spirit were slowly eroded. Trauma extended beyond the moment of punishment. It embedded itself into memory, into the very bloodline of families, leaving scars that would echo for generations. These were lives constrained not only by chains, but by secrecy, by fear, by the knowledge that one misstep could invite torture or death. Every breath, every glance, every quiet smile had the potential to trigger wrath. Psychological torment became as sharp as any whip, the fear of exposure as punishing as any lash. Every day was a lesson in terror. A servant might enter the parlor to pour tea, only to be mocked, struck, or humiliated for some imagined slight. A young woman could be forced to scrub floors until her knees bled, the mistress watching with cold satisfaction. Enslaved men could be ordered to strip in the privacy of a locked room, forced into degrading acts that destroyed not only their bodies, but their sense of self. Psychological warfare was constant. Obedience was a cage, and silence was the only key. The mind, body, and soul were prisoners of a system designed to break both individually and collectively. Yet the world began to learn. Slave narratives, once dismissed, began to lift the veil on these hidden realities. Harriet Jacobs wrote of the relentless torment she endured, of the jealous cruelty of the mistress, of nights spent hiding, trembling at the shadows of those who should have nurtured her. Frederick Douglass recalled the humiliation of male slaves, punished for imagined insolence or forced into the twisted games of their owners. These voices, once silenced, began to break through the polished veneer of history, revealing unspeakable truths. Hidden letters and diaries exposed fragments of obsession, jealousy, and cruelty. Rare legal documents, court cases where mistresses' secrets were accidentally revealed, lifted cornerstones of the lies built over centuries. Oral histories preserved whispered fragments of memory, carrying disturbing truths down through generations, even when official records remain silent. And now, in the 21st century, DNA evidence unravels even more, confirming hidden lineages and secret acts that white masters and mistresses thought buried forever. Each uncovered truth peeled away the mask of civility. The facade of refinement and benevolence crumbled. Every testimony, every letter, every genealogical discovery told a story of abuse, obsession, and a twisted hunger for control. The filthy lies could no longer stay buried. The disturbing reality of slavery was far more complex, far nastier, and far more heartbreaking than history textbooks ever admitted.